on YouTube for some reason. Okay. Okay, finally it does start on YouTube. So hey everyone, this is Master Victor Neustroyev. Today we are going to talk about how to play for a win. So I'm glad to see you all because we didn't have masterclasses and webinars for about a month. The last masterclass was devoted to how to punish opening rebels. I'm sure you remember at least something from that opening, from that masterclass, I mean, and applied in your openings. So let's check if the video and audio quality is good, please. Please let me know if you can see and hear everything. So Barry here asks if the class has been cancelled. Well, if you are talking about the masterclass, no, it's just started. It wasn't cancelled. I had some technical issues, but I quickly fixed it. Audio is not so loud. Okay. Well, it should be loud enough. I can check my other settings. Okay. What about now? Is audio better? It should be. I slightly increased the volume of the microphone, so it should be better. Okay, fine. And the microphone is just near in front of me. You see, this is my microphone. Okay, guys, can you share any news? So, and you can also tell me what problems do you experience in your chess games before we start. Let's just wait for a couple minutes. So everything is working. And I also need to set a stream on Facebook. Okay, everything is done and we can start. So I'm going to start with this example. This is the game played between Vasily Smyslov and Garry Kasparov. And within this game, I would like to illustrate what you should typically play when your king is under the attack. So in other words, I'm going to demonstrate some practical ideas of how to successfully withstand a kingside attack. So please take a look at the position here. Garry was playing with black pieces. He did a6 to play b5 in future. He also wanted such move like knight a5. White plays f4 with a clear intention to continue with f5, and with f5 they not only focus on the kingside attack but also try to ruin this pawn structure to be able to attack the pawn on d5 then, because they concentrated all their forces on to attack d5. So Garry plays knight a5, which is also active move. The knight goes to c4. and white continues with f5. That was quite predictable. The main idea of this move is to ruin the pawn center and take the pawn on d5. But after that, when Gary continued with b5, white simply moved with their queen to h4, and now they are totally focused on the kingside attack. And when you are under kingside attack, when your king is in trouble, your task is to combine defensive efforts together with counter-attacking options. So, for example, if in this position you decide instead of b5 to counter-attack with knight c4, that move is not considered to be good enough because the bishop simply retreats and you experience some serious problems with this pawn on e6. If instead you decide to play this move, rook c4, which seems to be a good idea by the first glance because this is how you chase the queen away, the queen goes there, and you can play actually queen e5 with the main idea to take advantage of the pin. So the d5 is attacked 3 times, but actually is not hanging because this knight is pinned and white just cannot use this knight as a defender. But the problem is that they can play with queen d2, get rid of a pin, and also create a threat. What do you think? Which threat did white create with queen d2 move? Okay, guys, if you have any private questions or anything, you can always message me on tricksofchess@gmail.com, as well as at school@chesslands.com. So, okay, here English Camera and Lisa Borges suggest bishop takes h6, and yes, I absolutely agree with you about this move. So bishop g6, taking the knight would be a critical mistake here for black, because white just have queen g5 right away, which does a double attack, you see? Or bishop g7 first, and after king g7, queen g5. The queen is hanging, and it's also a check, so white loses the material. Well, you may say it's enough, but actually, no. Considering how strong this attack is, it's definitely not enough to compensate the queen. So, queen h6 in this position. I mean, let's go back. Bishop h6, and we cannot take on c3, we have to take there, then the game continues with queen h6, and we have to move the knight to h6 to block it. But then white continues with this move, threatening with queen g7. It shouldn't be a problem by the first glance, and you can take, but then bishop comes to e4, and this knight is hanging. Rook c7 to save it, which falls under knight d5, and now you are in trouble. So the rook is hanging, there are so many pieces attacking, this knight is not participating in the game, and rook f7 is also coming. Okay, so this is where black is in trouble. So queen d2 is definitely a strong move, and then if you don't want to lose on d5, you have to play d4, but then bishop h6, and black is in trouble. That's why Gary didn't play rook c4. He played b5, as I told you. So queen h4. How to play then? What do you think? How black should defend? Okay, I'm looking at your ideas. So luckily, the internet here works really well, and that there is no lag. So you can see and hear me, and I'm also not nervous about how the stream goes. So as I told you, you should combine counter-attacking option and some defensive moves. So here Barry suggests knight e4, John suggests knight h7. Knight h7 is okay. Knight g8 is also suggested by Forky. Okay, and Peter suggested knight g8, knight h7. Okay, so here we choose between knight h7, knight g8, and knight e4. Well, I'm not sure about knight e4 move. Because what's the point? Because then it's queen h5 or queen h3. I don't know which move is better. But the problem is that this knight is hanging. Bishop h6 is coming. So, for example, if you take there, it should be bishop h6 right away. For example, knight takes there. Okay, so instead of queen h3, let me play this move. And after knight c3, it's bishop h6. Then knight takes d1, bishop g7, king takes, queen g6, king goes there, and that should be a real problem for black. Let's just find how to checkmate. Well, I think you can do this move. And then continue with these options to checkmate. Another thing you can do after king h8 is just to play f6. And then this is even stronger. So the bishop has to take. You take with your rook, and you're threatening with something like that. So rook e7. Yeah, not everything is so clear here. Okay. Okay, first let me deliver this check, and after king g8 I play rook f7. Because this time rook e7, neither rook e7 nor rook c7 helps. It's a checkmate. So knight e4 doesn't make sense. Knight h7 is actually an okay move, but the knight only covers the king, and that's it. So it's better to continue with knight g8 instead. With knight g8 you protect on h6 enough. You may also consider to remaneuver your knight to secure some critical square, because the knight on h7 can only get to g5, which is not required actually. So knight g8 is a better option. Okay, how the game continued. This is where Vasily Smyslov made a mistake. Instead of, well, he should play queen g4 actually. He did play queen h3. What's the difference? So queen g4, for example, knight c4, bishop goes there. And what do you think black should do in this position as one of the typical strategies to defend the king successfully? So what would you play to avoid future problems with the king on h8? Which strategy black should follow? There is also rook c4 suggested. Interesting. So I'm checking your comments now. Bishop f6, okay, by Barry. Knight e5, then bishop f6. Well, knight e5 is interesting move. However, I doubt it works. So knight e5, queen d4, and then bishop f6. Okay, maybe I'm mistaken with queen d4, so knight e5. The queen is hanging. Queen d4 is fine. Queen d4, bishop f6, f takes e6. And then I take on d5, because I don't see any discovered attacks here. So, one more thing I want you to learn. When you stay under attack, you should do three typical maneuver. So you should either look for a counterattack and mainly do your counterattack in the center by trying to open the position in the center. You should exchange pieces that are extremely dangerous for your position, so eliminating active pieces of your opponent. So here they always consider bishop takes h6, and that's why we have to keep the knight there. But if you exchange your useless bishop for the enemy bishop on c1, you not only defend the king, but you also weaken the b2. So three basic things are look for a counterattack, open the position in the center, and exchange the enemy pieces. When I say open the position in the center, I mean that you should also get more space. So sometimes it makes sense to move the pawns that are covering your king in order to obtain more space and to let your pieces get to the side where the king is located and defend some key squares. This is what I'm going to demonstrate. So yes, knight e3 is also a threat when the bishops are exchanged. That's right. Well, however, it's not the end. F takes e6, then knight f6 with a temper, because I can hardly suggest a better move because rook d5 is coming. So knight f6, but white has this tricky idea with bishop g5, after which h takes g5 is a mistake because it exposes the king. This is the only option for white. But then it will be such a forced variation with bishop takes queen, rook takes d8, then it's equal, but the d5 pawn dies, rook takes d5, bishop takes d5, knight e3. Looks like white loses the material, but they have this sneaky move bishop c6. Well, this is not an option because of bishop d7 at least. Rook takes e6, rook f8 check, king goes there, bishop e4, g6, and this is where white is a pawn up and is playing for a win, but the b2 and a3 are weaknesses, and black can get some practical chances to fight for a draw. So queen g4 was the best move, and after knight c4 it could lead to this forced endgame, to this one. Let's go back. Instead, queen h3, which actually isn't a mistake. By the first glance, there is still a pressure on the e6, right? So, but knight c4, bishop c1, and this time bishop g5 is stronger. F takes e6. Bishop takes c1 and rook takes c1. So some of you may say, why it's so important to take on c1 right away? Why not to capture on d5 first and capture on c1 with the other rook? Well, then queen b6, and after rook takes c1, it's knight b2. This knight is pinned. The pawn on a3 is a weakness, and these pawns are also vulnerable, especially the one on e6, which is attacked already 2 times with rook and queen. So rook c1, knight e3, which is a fork, and well, rook g1, just knight f6, and black is fine. This pawn dies, the d5 is well protected. That's why here white decides to take on d5 and sacrifice the exchange. Taking on c1 doesn't look good here. Knight takes d5, because then you can be pinned, and saving the knight with the other knight doesn't work because of what? Because of bishop d5, knight takes d5, and in this position e4, taking advantage of the pin, and that's it. So that's why knight f1. They also take on f1. This is what happened in the game. Again, Gary understands that he has good chances to play for a win, because he is up the exchange. However, the exchange is compensated with 2 pawns on e2 and e6, but he understands that he'll get more advantage in case if he simplify the position. So when you have extra material, your winning strategy will be to play maybe not the best moves, but the most solid moves, which doesn't allow your opponent to make complications and provoke you to make a mistake. And Gary exchanges pieces with this move. Knight f4, do not exchange them. Now g6 should be covered. Knight e7. Well, this move with the idea of h4 and then maybe knight g6, queen g6, bishop e4, something like that, it seems to be a better plan. Smyslov plays this. And this is where Gary applies another typical strategy that you should definitely learn when you defend and apply in your games when you have to defend your king's position. What I'm talking about, who knows? Can you guess the move and also explain why this move is important? So I'm looking at your comments now. No suggestion, guys. So okay, no suggestions at the moment. So, well, is queen g4 a threat? Well, not immediate, but here white definitely wants to play h4, h5, and get the control over the g6. And then at a certain moment of the game, they will play knight g6, and they can capture with the queen and then play bishop e4, which is really dangerous. However, they can also capture with the pawn and force your king to stay on the back rank, which is quite unpleasant, but maybe is okay. So Peter suggests rook f6 or king h7. Well, no, definitely not this, because you fall under this. Well, it's not everything is clear. So king h7. Let's say bishop e4, king goes back. Maybe he does this as a prophylaxis and then continues that with knight g6. So no, I think king h7 is a mistake because it at least falls under bishop e4. Rook f6 is the other option. Then the game is continued with h4, h5. Okay, we have other ideas. It's rook c4, trying to pin it. Also with the idea of queen c8. Let me check any other suggestions. Queen d2. Okay. Rook c4. Rook c4 is okay move. So still h4. h5. But well, rook c4 is actually okay move. Let's go back. What else? So queen e8, for example, to cover this, then this, and if you play rook f6, it's just rook d1 with the idea to go through this, to enter with the rook through the 7th rank. For example, rook d7, and the knight is pinned. Rook c1, king h2, and the next move can be this, to break the connection between these two pieces, and in case of rook f7, capture there with a check, and then capture on f7. So it's hard to suggest a move, but Gary somehow finds this move. Nobody suggested it. What means, guys, that you should definitely remember about this option, and now please pay as much attention as possible to what's going on the board. So black expands space around their king. They play g5. By the first glance, this move exposes the king's position, right? So the king at least can be attacked diagonally. But this is the only disadvantage of this move. The main idea is not only to chase the knight off, but also let black pieces to control the 7th rank. For example, the queen can control the diagonal like that. The rook can control the 7th rank. The knight may move even there to cover the king. So it makes sense to expose the king, to not let your opponent get extra space and pressure your king's position. Please remember about this option. Oh, Lisa Borges was correct. Yes, she suggested g5. Sorry, I didn't notice it in time. Okay, so what happened in the game? Queen h3, and you cannot take the knight because of queen h6. So, for example, this, and it seems to be a decisive attack. Bishop e4, and I don't know how to defend. Well, I don't even need to calculate it to understand that after queen h6 the attack is decisive. To illustrate it, let me quickly show the game that I played today on Sunday morning in Blitz. I was playing with white pieces on chess.com. And I decided to play Evans Gambit. Just a quick game. We are not going to get into the details, but I think I played well. So knight b5 attacking c7, they played this. Here e5 is the best option, but I decided to play rook c1 to attack on c7, c6, the knight has to retreat, knight f6, e5, d takes e5. So d takes e5, the knight goes back. I just protected with the rook, that was kind of inaccuracy. I could definitely play better. With which move? Oh, I don't remember. With knight e4 and knight d6, even sacrificing the pawn on e5. I didn't calculate the line to the very end, that's why didn't realize that white has advantage, so I played this move, knight c5, bishop b1, having in mind this move, so knight c4, and I can double and attack on h7, but I played queen f4, which is one of the best options, knight a3, and they play that with the idea of knight d6. They have to take, and this is how I save my bishop and don't exchange it for this knight on the edge. And then my opponent castled, after which I realized that this is a decisive attack on the king side. And here even bishop h7 is a winning move. So this, if he goes there, it's just this. If he goes to g6, it's still quite unfavorable for him. I can, for example, continue with what? With this move, and then queen e4, and yeah, and so on. Or queen g4. So my advantage is decisive. But I didn't calculate this line, and I just played this move. The pawn is hanging. If he does that, I play this, provoking him to play this move, and then maybe g4. But he played h6, which I expected him to play as the main move. And after that, I completely ruined his kingside position. So it's a fork. He has to take if he doesn't want to play without material. And this is my next move, after which I checkmate on g7. I can also do this and this. So that's why he played that. And I didn't calculate any lines here. After I calculated knight f6, g takes f6, e takes f6, I decided that that's it. The game no longer deserves, I mean, this combination no longer deserves any analysis. I just have material majority on the king side and my opponent cannot save the position. So the only move that I could consider was this, but after bishop h7, I just take the queen. So he played queen f8, and after queen f5, rook takes f4, rook takes f4, he realized that this is a completely losing position. And then he should resign, but he took there, and only after that he did resign. So at some moments when you see that the king is exposed, for example, like it is in this position, and your opponent can bring pieces, while your pieces cannot defend the king's position in time, you may lose the game. So try to avoid it. That's why after queen h3, you shouldn't let him take on h6, of course. And Gary plays rook f6 for such purposes. Knight retreats. Rook takes f1 with a check, otherwise they would take on h6. Bishop takes there. King g7. Well, here you may say, what about such move like queen f8? Well, it looks like a defensive move, and this is how you bring your pieces closer to the defense of the king. But what I don't like about this position is that the enemy knight goes to f7. It's not a disaster, because if they play this move, you play there, but it's kind of an annoying piece. That's why instead of playing queen f8, here you would better continue with the king. So having the pawn on g5 allows you to bring the king and surround it with your pieces. Queen g4, queen d5 check. If, for example, bishop g2, how would you win in this position? Who knows? Okay, guys, I'm looking at your comments. Queen f5. Well, queen f5 is definitely a move that offers advantage for black, but it's not a winning move. You can win much faster. Okay, so there are suggestions by Anonymous Punk and English Camera. And okay, so Ollie Williams, Peritam, and John. So yes, you're absolutely right. It's rook c1 check, knight takes, and this is a checkmate. Fine. So bishop g2 is not an option. Playing king g1 is fine, but e4 gains a tempo. Queen d4, h4. That's not a big problem. Rook f8 is a tempo move, so they cannot take on g5 because their bishop is hanging. Bishop e2, queen e3, and if this time they take, of course you can take with the queen, but h5 is even better. If they take, it's rook h8. If they play this move, then you can play knight g6, and if they still take you, let's just take the bishop actually. Okay, so king g2, this move was played in the game, knight g6, h5, chasing that knight, knight goes back, b4, and then again I want you to guess the move. What did black play after the game ended in 4 moves here? So I'm sure it's hard to guess the next move, but there is something that you may notice about the position. this something I want you to notice is actually the fact that white is in a Zugzwang. Let me check if there are any suggestions. Rook f2, rook f2, knight f2. Okay, here you can just make a king move, and it's hard to play a move for white now. They played king h2 in the game, but let's look if there is a better option. Looks like not. So they, well, anyway, after that, it's just rook d8. And this time they are in trouble, because if they move the knight, it's rook d2, and black takes advantage of the pin. So, for example, they played e5, and then black just ended with extra knight, and Vasily Smyslov resigned. Here it doesn't make sense to play without a knight, especially with such two weak pawns and with no problems with the king on h7. So, instead of king h2, let's make another move. Well, we cannot move the knight because it's rook f2 coming. Moving the queen means lose the bishop. Moving the bishop there means that rook takes, and then queen takes d3. So e5 seems to be the only move, right? But if you play e5, it's just king to g7. Now the moves are over, and it's time to play with the king, after which rook d3 works perfectly well. That's it. Okay, so what did I want you to remember about when you have to defend your king's side position? So 3 things that we realized here. First of all, you should combine your counter-attacking move with defensive moves. That's why knight g8, the defensive move that was protecting on h6 and was also attacking there, and that later allowed black to play knight c4, was required. Second, it makes sense to open the position in the center and eliminate active pieces of your opponent to prevent a future attack of your kingside position. Then, please remember that you should expand space, and this is how you get more pieces, that you may get more pieces involved into the defense of your king. So, for example, by playing this move, it's not only stops knight g6 in future or right now, but also allows us to control these squares with the queen, and the queen will feel comfortable there. The knight may go to g6 successfully, so this is a great move, even despite that it, by the first glance, exposes the king. Okay, that's it. That's it about how to withstand the kingside attack. The next winning strategy is devoted to how to play symmetrical endgames, or how to play symmetrical positions. I mean the positions with symmetrical pawn structure. But before we proceed with the next game, if you are interested in more strategies of how to improve your performance, how to play for a win, you should read this article on TheChessWorld.com. This article is written by me, and here I explain 10 different strategies that will improve your chess performance right away. So read it, go through the analysis, it's annotated. So, for example, what are they? So, opening for all occasions. Then, how to shatter the fortress. So, what to do when your opponent creates a solid fortress and by the first glance you cannot do anything to win it. How to defend the king itself. I mean himself. So for example, you can travel with your king from one side to the other side. This is well illustrated in this game example. How to play when every temper costs a lot. So there is another game that is illustrated here. Especially this is what you should remember when you play with opposite castling position. How to play against a higher rated player. So this is an example. Well, some tricky strategies. What benefits do you get when you sacrifice the rook for a fianchetted bishop? So you can definitely read this article, but if you are even excited more about it, then you may enroll into my newest course, Winning Strategies for Club Players. And here I created 24 different strategies that you may implement, and your performance will increase immediately. So it's a 10 hours course with 24 examples, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. Okay, now let's continue with our second example. Our second example is taken from the game between Aaron Nimzovich and Zigbert Tereš. So look at this position. It's well, king e7 was played, and now it's white to move. What do you think you should do, and what is the basic principle that you should follow when you play with symmetrical pawn structure? Who knows? Okay, guys, I'm looking for your suggestions. So there are several things you can do, but there is one thing and one typical strategy that you should remember every time you have symmetrical pawn structure. Well, what do I mean by saying symmetrical pawn structure? It doesn't mean that the pawns should be located like that: e3, e6, f7, f2, g7, g2. So, for example, it means that each pawn is in front of the other one. So, if they have the pawn on the e file, you, to get a symmetrical position, also should have the pawn on the e file, but it can be on e4 or even on e5. Here it's absolutely symmetrical. The only, well, the pawn structure is absolutely symmetrical, but there is a difference in how pieces are located. Any suggestions? Okay, Barry Philip suggests rook c4. Milosh suggests a3. Well, Milosh, a3, and what about knight c6 or even knight d5? Knight d5 is fine, I think. Okay, pawn to a3 also. Okay, rook c7 by, okay, rook c7, rook d7. And if you play that, rook hc1, they take on a2. You can exchange, but king c6 and knight a5 doesn't work. It's just king b6, double attacking. So you simplify, but didn't achieve any advantage. Rook c4. Rook c4 was suggested first by who? First by Barry. It's rook c4, that's right. Why this move? Well, you should remember that when you play a symmetrical position, with every move you make, you should create and develop your initiative. This is the basic thing that you should remember. So it's fine. It's not obligatory draw. If you are pressuring your opponent and you create threats with all your moves, then they will make a mistake, and maybe this mistake will be decisive for you to provoke them to make another mistake. And this is how they will lose the game. If we have enough time, then we will continue with the game that I played, and the position was also symmetrical there. I'll show you what I did there. So rook c4 attacking the knight. It was better to move the knight to c6, after which white would double and then continue with knight c5, trying to undermine the b7 pawn to take this knight, but then knight e5. Rook goes back, b6, knight goes to b3, and white can still find a good plan with knight d4 and then either knight c6 or knight b5, and combined with rook c7, they have some practical chances to play for a win. However, here Tarash played knight a6. He wanted to not let the white rook to enter the c7 square. Rook h c1, rook d7, and f4. What a weird move, f4. What do you think? Why this move was played? Okay, before we continue, just one more thing I want to illustrate. After rook c4, if they take on a2, the knight is trapped. That, I think, is obvious. If this move is played, then you just continue with rook c7. And they cannot block, because you exchange and take the knight, so they have to move the king, let's say there. After which you take there, they take one pawn, but you take two, at least. However, maybe knight c5 is a better move. You attack and you also threaten with these moves. So knight d3 is not an option. So knight a6, rook h c1, rook d7, and f4. Rook a4, yes. In that variation, rook a4 traps, right. Maybe it's even better. Yes, John is absolutely correct. It's protected position for the knight on d4. Rook h d8, knight goes to d4, so black wants to chase it away, f6. And this is where Nimzovich plays a4, which is fine, because black cannot play e5 and control this square, so maybe it was better to play b4 move instead, then b5, knight takes b5, and rook d2, but then knight a7, and if knight b4 is played, here white has a super move knight c8, which forces black to sacrifice the exchange. Otherwise they lose the material. So for example, this move knight b6, and then you take the knight. So b4 was slightly better, but a4 is fine as well. So pawn takes, knight goes to f3, attacking it. This pawn is a weakness, so we already created a weakness into the enemy camp and force the enemy king to defend this weakness, but also fall under the attack of knight g5. Knight g5 right away isn't a good idea. Well, let me illustrate you something. It was b4 played, b6. I just want to show you knight g5 in this position. King f6, knight takes h7, and the king is trapped. The only way to save it is rook h4, but then at least the pawn on b4 can be captured. That's why after b6, here Nimzovich plays this move to prevent rook d2 and to play with the knight. But black plays h6, so knight g5 no longer works. How would you play then? So let's sum our achievements. What do we have with white? We got some extra space on the queen side. We located our rooks better. So the knight is out of the game for a while, and if it goes there, it's just b5, and the knight won't be able to join the place of action for a few more moves. The king is potentially under the attack, and the pawn on e5 is a weakness. What else should be done? Who knows? Yes, I can see your comments on YouTube as well. So I am not only reading comments on Facebook, but I'm reading them on YouTube, chesslands.com, and my Twitch account. Okay, guys. The general principle that I was teaching you about symmetrical position is that with moves you play, you should you should create and develop initiative and provoke your opponent to defend. And this is how you force him to make weaknesses into his camp that you can take advantage of. So initiative. Just remember one word, initiative, and that is important. So probably you've heard that several extra tempers in symmetrical position can be enough to play for a win. Well, to be honest, I had a situation, and actually I wanted to explain it. I had a situation where the position was symmetrical. I was 2 tempers up and definitely could play for a win, but got confused and was able only to equalize. However, I did win that game. Okay, so no suggestions, and let me continue. No, there is a suggestion. b4 to b5. Well, I don't like this move because the knight goes to c5. Rook e4 by Barry. Well, rook e4. Rook e4, rook d5. So, doesn't help much. And finally, well, e4 by Milosh. Well, e4, I don't see the point. And now the best solution by who? Darius. Exactly. h4. h4 maybe. Yes. What does this move do? I'll show you. This move stops the g7 pawn, and now the g pawn is also the object of the attack. Rook d5. Rook g4, attacking it. What now? If king f7, it's just e4, and this is the object of the attack now. The rook cannot stay on these 4 squares to protect, and it will be the e5 pawn will be taken on the next move. If instead this rook comes to d7, it's basically the same thing. You can play e4 right away, or you can check first, and then play e4, and then take on e5. So that's why they have to use their 5th rook to protect on g7. But now rook c6. So moving the king to d5 means there will be a mating net. So for example, rook goes there. It's hanging. So I don't know how to play. Maybe e4. Knight comes to d2. And after knight b4, you just take there and threaten with what? Maybe with this move. Actually, I think that rook cg6 isn't a good move here. Let's just play rook c2. Yes, actually, let's play this, and if he goes there, we'll start with rook g6 first. Right. But okay, rook c6, rook d6. Rook g6 check. The king has to go to e7 only. If it goes to d5 instead, you take, he takes, you chase him away. He needs to protect the rook and goes there, but falls under b5. So king e7. And this is how they lose a pawn. King f8. After which the position becomes absolutely winning and white successfully realize their advantage. The rest doesn't make sense for us because I'm sure that many of you can successfully realize 2 extra pawns in such a game. So I just want you to notice that the position of the knight on f5 was also beneficial because the knight was attacking on h6 as well as protecting on e3. and at the same time was supported with the G pawn. So let's go back and realize what white did in order to succeed. There was the knight is out of the game. There was a weakness there, and the weakness there that was fixed with a perfect pawn maneuver. For example, if there was no pawn, then black could continue with g5, and then the rook's position on g4 will be useless. This rook is active enough to get to the c6 square in time. This rook goes to g6. So these moves with the rooks are played in order to chase the king away and attack the pawn on e5. It's already attacked with the knight, but in order to get rid of the defender of this rook on d5, you have to play e4 and chase the rook away. So white, by making threats with almost every move that they played, forced black to make weaknesses into their camp. Such weakness was the pawn on e5 and the pawn on g7. Another two weaknesses were these two squares that can be occupied with white rooks. And because of a combination of all these factors, white was able to succeed. So extra tempers and initiative is the key of how to play in symmetrical positions. Okay, so we are done with it, and let me quickly show you the game that I played in Montenegro in 2019. So 4 years ago. Okay, 4 years ago. Not 4, but 3 years and 2 months. I was playing with white pieces, and if you read my email, you probably know this story, that in order to get 2305 rating points, I had to win. I have to win and draw. So I had 2 rounds left, and I had to score 1.5 points. So that was the 8th round. The 9th was the last one. So, and I was playing with white pieces against a player who was considered to be not as weaker than me, especially with black pieces. I prepared. So this is how I typically play against Russian game, and most people take here. That was what I was preparing, because I noticed that he already played this opening. But this time here he decided to retreat. I knew that d4 is good, d5 and bishop d3. This is what I remembered. But nobody played knight f6 in serious games, because in this position white is 2 tempers up, and these 2 tempers offers stable advantage for white. But the problem is that I didn't know how to convert such advantage. I knew that bishop d3 is definitely the best option. This is what I analyzed with the computer sometime before, but I didn't know how to proceed. And my opponent plays this move. And I'm 100% sure that you won't guess my next move, which was a terrible move. But at that time, I understood that that's definitely not a good move, and definitely not the best option. But this is the move that helps me to play for a win, that may potentially create a kind of unpleasant position for my opponent, and he may make a mistake. So I want you to suggest the best move, and I also want you to guess the move that I played here. So Ahmed asked me if I can see the comments, but there are no comments after yours. Okay. So who knows? What's the best move here? Castle is too boring. Yes, castle is too boring, and this is definitely the move that I consider it. What else? What else? Let me check. Bishop e2, queen e2 by John. Well, John, queen e2 is interesting, but what's the purpose? Queen e2, bishop e7. What did you achieve with this move? No, I mean the answer is nothing. H3 by Barry. Barry, it looks like you know something about this position. Any other suggestions? Bishop g5. Well, bishop g5 is interesting move. So castling is the basic move, but h3. h3 is the best option, which forces the knight to retreat, and this is how he could lose a tempo. If he takes there, it's fine because I get a bishop pair in an open position, so which I'm sure I could convert. H3, bishop h5. This is why I didn't play h3 myself. I did consider this move, but then I could simply gain a pawn with g4. So when I was showing this game to my coach, Grandmaster Dmitry Bocharov, he wondered how I didn't find it during the game, because it's actually quite simple. Bishop g6, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen e2 check. What then? I don't think this move deserves our analysis, at least because of knight e5. So this and these, two options. If he played that, it's queen b5 check, and I gain the pawn on b7. Well, maybe first g5, he goes there, and then I play queen b5, and then I take the pawn on b7, or maybe I'll take the pawn on d5. If they play with the queen, then I still play g5, the knight moves, and the pawn on d5 is not protected. So maybe this, knight moves, maybe when it goes to e4, but I still take on d5, and my opponent is down a pawn with a bad position left. Okay, so h3 definitely offered an advantage for me. I played knight e2. So can you imagine it? Well, why did I play this move? I wanted to relocate my knight there and have the pawn on c3. And I definitely expected him to take what he did. That was a good idea for black, but I thought that maybe it gives me an open file to succeed with the attack. So, knight c6, c3, queen d7, bishop a3, bishop a7, and this is where I played knight g3 to fight for the central square, and that would provoke him to play g6. And g6 gives me a clear plan of how to start playing for a win. So, for example, I could continue with h4. After which I actually expected him to play h5, and for h5 I prepared bishop f1 with the idea to remaneuver there to h3. With the pawn on f3 I was taking these two squares under the control, and castling queenside would be quite dangerous. Castling kingside will be dangerous as well, because I may continue attacking him through the g file. So he castled, that was a good idea, and this is where the position is basically equal, and I should either do this or this and castle queenside. This is the plan. I played that, so I decided, okay, so you wanna castle queenside, you think it's a safe place, but what if I attack you even there? So I really wanted to win that game, because I wasn't sure that I can win the last game where I would play with black pieces. So b4, rook d8. Now I realize that the king on e1 is in trouble, so I decided to castle queenside. Bishop d6, and here my opponent is threatening with Bishop g3, f takes g3, rook takes a3, queen takes a3, and rook e8. I can show you. So let me play some random move. Okay, yes, bishop g3, pawn takes, rook takes, queen takes, rook e8. This is a pin, so I have to block it with this move, but that is a disaster. They take with the knight, and I lose the game. So I castled queenside, which was okay. Another option was to keep the king on f1 and continue the attack there. That was practically a better option. I didn't consider it, to be honest. I should, but I didn't. So castle, rook e6. In my opinion, that was an accuracy. Because after that, I immediately played bishop f1 and threatened with this. So the only way to save is to move the knight, and after that play this. But while the knight is not there, I can continue the attack with the h-pawn. However, it's not enough to win, and this is where I got stuck. So we have almost a symmetrical pawn structure. I gained some space on the king side, some space on the queen side, but how exactly to continue? What would you suggest? Who knows? Okay, so I didn't know how to play, and I also didn't want to spend a lot of time. Well, I spent more time than my opponent, so if I spend even more, I can be in a time trouble. That's why I decided just to play chess and make some move. Well, h6, well, I don't know what for. Maybe later I can somehow attack h7. No, I think it makes sense just to keep it like it is, because potentially it may ruin his pawn chain. a4, yeah, maybe a4. I just played a3. Why did I play this move? I just wanted to play c4 and then d5. The best move, well, I analyzed the game after, the best move was this, and if he takes, I play d5. Which could open the position, and because of that, I could successfully take advantage of my bishop pair. Bishop b5, rerouting to d5. Well, that was better than what I did, definitely. So here bishop b5 is better what I did. But I wanted to combine the ideas of this and these options. If I reroute my bishop to b3, it will be only on b3. Okay, so I played a3, which is a mistake. He played that. I played c4 to play d5. And he plays knight f6 to support on d5. Take. Oh, wait. Take. And this is where I wanted to succeed with the attack. I played c5 to keep the position closed and then to continue with something like that. Maybe c6. So he doesn't want to move the bishop to a bad position. That's why he took and improved my pawns. This is also why I played c5. I wanted my pawns to get improved. So I have a bishop pair, but I can take advantage of this bishop pair only if the position becomes open. I also have a queenside attack, of course, but how to take advantage of it? So he plays king b8. b5 doesn't work. b5, knight a5, he threatens there, and if I take, he takes on a3, and I am in trouble. because he enters my camp with his pieces. So that's why bishop d3. Rook there, bishop retreats, queen g7, and then I wanted to take advantage of some other weaknesses. So g6 is a weakness, queen g5, so my next move can be this, and I'm also threatening with this. That's why he played that move. Queen h4, attacking there. Rook goes there to protect, queen f4, knight f8, and I played bishop b5 to create a pin and to take that. He didn't realize that actually he could allow me to do this, but I think it's completely winning if that happens, because the king will be vulnerable. However, my opponent played queen f6. Queen retreats to d2. a6, and now it doesn't make sense to take because he takes with the queen, so I played bishop f1. Knight e6. And this is where I made a mistake. So I played b5. Well, not a mistake, but a kind of a mistake. The best move was to play this, but I could hardly make such a move. For a human player, it's almost impossible to block this bishop. But then the position could be open there. And with f4, I could prevent him from playing f4. If I play a4, which I originally wanted to play, then the game could continue with that. And after b5, the knight jumps there. And if I take, he can draw the game. Of course, I saw all these options that after knight c5, he simply delivers a perpetual check. And he would be glad to deliver such a perpetual check because he wanted to win, but he was also fine with a draw. And I wanted to win. So that was a really long game. Maybe we finished the last in that round. So b5, a takes b5, bishop b5, knight goes there to attack. I protect with my queen and also keep an eye on the a5 square. Rook f8, and I push the pawn. So bishop e3. Why bishop e3? Because I expected him to play this, after which I improved my bishop, and now the position is favorable for me. So I successfully activated the bishop. King goes to a8, and I have to retreat with my bishop. Maybe it could make sense first to include this move and then retreat, but okay. Knight f7, queen a5. The idea is to play this and that. So he had to play this move to stop my bishop c7 option. So I retreated back. That was move 40. So I did 40 moves, and after that 30 extra minutes were added to my clock. So g5, chasing my knight away, the bishop away. The bishop goes there. Then the bishop has to go there, and then he plays g4. And that was actually favorable for me because this is how I can open the position. Again, the best option was to do this and to improve this bishop by doing this operation later in the game. But I played queen f4 because I realized I can attack the weakness on f5. Rook e6, rook h5. Now he can hardly save it. So, for example, if he does a move like that, what would I play then? Well, actually, I don't know. I would probably continue with maybe with queen g5 move to pass the game into the endgame. So, but he did play that. And this is where I definitely should take. But I decided that queen a5 is dangerous. Queen a5, queen d2, queen a4, and I thought that there is a perpetual check. But after king b2, actually my position is winning. So I shouldn't be afraid of that. But I played queen d2 to stop it. However, he took on f3, and that was his mistake. So finally, I provoke him to make a mistake. Rook takes f5, rook f6, then I take and exchange the queens. Luckily he did exchange, and now I win because of these two bishops. Also the pawn on f3 is cannot be protected, so I can just move my king and take it. This is what happened, and the position became absolutely winning. Take. He enters my camp, and then I just exchange the rooks. And I connected my pass pawn. So d4 to stop my bishop's attack. But a5. He does that, and I play this. So if he takes there, it's bishop takes f5, and the knight is restricted. It goes there, after which I continue with bishop f4. Then he goes with the king somewhere, and I start pushing the f pawn. He played that, I played with my king, and after that move, he resigned because he simply cannot stop a7 and a6. So what I want you to remember from this game, you see the game was equal for maybe 40 moves, for 44 moves, where he made this significant mistake. That was his significant mistake. After which I'm just slightly better. And the main mistake which allowed me to win was to exchange the queens, because then I can simply take advantage of my bishop pair, because the position becomes open. So what I did wrong, I decided to change the pawn structure. That was my mistake. Instead of that, I'd better keep the pawn structure symmetrical. It was fine, but would create threats with my moves to obtain the initiative and develop it later in the game. So that was a mistake. But the good thing is that by playing, then I was creating problems. So maybe b4 seems to be, well, b4 actually isn't a good idea, but it seems quite dangerous. Here, for example, if he was an international master or grandmaster, he would sacrifice this exchange because this bishop is quite important for the position. But he played this defensive move because I was creating a threat. And this is what I want you to do. And if you want to play for a win in symmetrical positions, create threats, even if this threat, even if you see your opponent can defend against this threat. This is a so-called a mosquito bite strategy. When you create some small traps and threats, and your opponent is able to defend and finally defends against 10 of them, but when you play it the 11th time, he finally makes a mistake. This is what happened in my game, and this is what may also happen in your game. But I think that your opponent makes a mistake earlier, maybe after 5 or 6 threat. So this is what I want you to learn from today. And let me just remind you that if you are looking for more winning strategies, you can read this article. You can read this article where I demonstrate 10 winning strategies, or 10 strategies that will help you to play for a win, or in some cases to fight for a draw if your position is worse. And if you want to learn more and improve your chess performance right away by applying these strategies, so basically to become a better chess player, you should improve your tactics, positional play, opening, calculation. However, that takes a lot of efforts from any chess player. If you want to improve your chess performance right now, you should learn these winning strategies, and you can enroll into my course, which is now on sale only for $49. So I'll send you with the link. The link is there, and finally there. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at school@chesslance.com. I also okay, so one more thing for those who wants to learn chess. Here at Chesslands you can schedule your free chess lesson by clicking on this page. You can choose a coach that you want to work with, choose timing, then enter your name, and free lessons are actually free. It's written here, proceed to a payment, because we freeze $2 on your card account, on your bank account, and this money will be revealed in a few days. So it's just to prove that you won't miss this meeting. If you are looking for 1 hour lesson, you can click here, book your class, choose, well, you can choose your time. I'm actually in Almaty. Okay, it doesn't. Oh, probably. Okay, yes, Almaty. So you can choose your coach, FIDE Master Nikolai Yordanov, maybe International Master David Fitzsimons. Choose the time that works well for you, and then order and pay for that class. Okay, fine. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them now. If well, or you can email me. Both options work for you. So I'm checking if there are any questions. Winning strategies. Okay, so good question. Let me read it. So the question is, winning strategies for club players with FIDE Master Viktor Neustroyev is a book or video lessons? It's video lessons. 10 hours of video lessons. 24 lectures. Well, it's 24 videos voiced and explained by me with PGNs attached. So no, it's not a book, it's a video lesson, which in my opinion is better than reading books. Well, I'm still reading books, but if I were to choose, I would choose watching video, because this is how I understand better. Can you please what? Illustrate or what? So explain on about symmetrical positions. Well, okay, what do you want me to explain? Let me show you. Actually, here in the course, you will also find how to play symmetrical positions. Where is it? Well, I don't see it for some reason, but it's definitely here. How to play symmetrical position, and there is a game example of between Polugaevsky and Smyslov. Yes, of course. So for example, you didn't know, I'm sure you didn't know how to draw the game, so how to provide your opponent with no chances. Well, probably you won't get any winning chances as well, but the game will be close to a draw. How to play if you are a higher rated player? Well, how to play without space, which is important, and how to play with extra space. How to play unpleasantly, my favorite. How to play unpleasantly and the ability to create complications or to complicate the position. This is what I like a lot. Well, shattering the fortress, this is a good example. Well, this is what I'm sure you didn't know about the knight on c6 or c3. And of course, mosquito bite strategy that I explained. Okay, let's go back and let me repeat what I told you about symmetrical positions. So, when you play positions with symmetrical pawn structure, it's always better to have some extra tempers. But if you don't have them, I still want you to create and develop your initiative. With every move that you play, you should make a small threat and provoke your opponent to defend. So the initiative is the key to success in symmetrical positions. Okay, any other questions? Okay, looks like not, and let's finish because I have one more class to conduct today. So I have a class with a student from Mexico now. Okay, fine. So next week we will conduct a masterclass. It will be a paid masterclass which will consist of 4 hours. I will announce it. If you want, you can join. It will be international master Julian Estrada. So I'll show you. This guy, international master Julian Estrada Nieta, he actually has 2 grandmasters norm. Okay, fine. So